Welcome back to Gloved Up Garage. Well, the Marauder's back in the shop. After we got the Cobra moved in and the Fox body moved out, the Marauder sat outside for a couple of weeks. And it fired right up, moved outside, no problem. And after sitting out there in kind of the cooler weather as the temperature changed for a couple of weeks, it would not start back up. And the issue that the previous owner was having decided to show back up. And essentially what's going on is you turn the key, the engine does not start. You don't get a click, you don't get anything. The fuel pump comes on, everything in the interior operates like it should. It's just a no crank, no start, which is usually related to an electrical issue. When I first talked to the gentleman that owned this vehicle, it sounded like it just needed a battery. The voltage was very low, the battery had sat for quite some time without a charge, and it just seemed like it was a dead battery issue. So he replaced the battery, and after he did that, and I guess maybe he moved the car, it started right up. There was no issue. He did jump it once with a relay under the hood, and that's what leads me to believe that it was something to do with the wire, the signal, between the ignition switch on the column where you put the key in and that relay. The fact that you could apply 12 volts to the relay and start the car tells me that there's something going on. So I dug out my factory manual, started doing some digging. Basically what it has you do is it has you start in the interior. You pull a fuse out of the interior fuse box, which I'll open the door, show you where that's at. You can see that fuse box right there. So pop that cover off. This 5 amp fuse, which is right here, it's kind of hard to see. Thanks for that light glare. You pull that out, check to make sure you got signal going to it. 12 volt signal. In my case, I did, no problem. The next thing you do is you go on the other side of that fuse where it would send power through the fuse and out. You check that resistance from that fuse to the sensor on the side of the transmission, which I did that, and I had signal. The next step is you check the wire that would go out of that sensor up here to the fuse box. Basically, you pull the starter relay, which I've already done here, and then you check the signal going to that terminal right there from the sensor on the side of the transmission. And I had a good signal. No breaks in the wire means you got a good signal. So I checked it with a test light because in all reality, if you are sending 12 volts from the ignition switch to this terminal, a test light should light up showing you have 12 volts. That signal should be 12 volts. And I wasn't getting any signal from the test light. So I knew that the wiring from this terminal right here to the switch is good. I know the wiring from the switch to the ignition switch is good. But I couldn't for the life of me figure out why I wasn't getting 12 volts through the switch. I went ahead and ordered a new switch off of eBay. This is the old one. And I went ahead and installed it, thinking that maybe this switch was just bad. Maybe it had an internal short, whatever the case may be. Put the new one on and nothing changed. Retraced all these wires again, still no change, no start, no crank. So I was sitting here looking at this sensor and I thought it's got to be something to do with the sensor. And if you see right there where it says neutral and it's got a line on it, well, this white shaft actually goes on the shifter that comes out of the side of the transmission. This sensor mounts over top of it. And what this essentially does is tells the vehicle that it's in park or neutral. Well, when I put this on under the car, I just unbolted it, plugged it in, bolted it back on, rolled out. And what I have learned is there's some adjustment to this. I didn't really look, but you can see these holes are not round. They're slotted. And essentially to fix the problem, I put the car in neutral, slid back under the car, and I looked. On this shaft right here is another line. Well, that line was actually about 1/8 of an inch over from where it should be. So loosen those bolts up, turn that sensor to where that line met the line on the housing, tighten the bolts back down, came up here, plugged my relay back in. This thing fired right up with no problems. So it could be that this sensor was out of alignment the entire time. One of the things that he had tried to diagnose and had a friend of his diagnose was to swap out this sensor with another known good sensor. And I think it was just the same issue where they swapped out sensors but didn't realize that there's an alignment procedure to it. So for now, I think I've got this issue fixed. I'll plug my relay back in, but it seems as though there's no issue now. I've started it up 2 or 3 times. It's firing right up like it should. So hopefully that's all I got to do for this for now. Well, now that all that's figured out, I'm gonna put everything away and get back to the teardown on the Cobra engine. Well, I've got the engine on the stand. I'm gonna go ahead and start the teardown process on it. Gotten the chain off of it, starting to work on the wiring harness, and I've got to take the upper intake manifold off in order to get into some of the wiring tucks in real close underneath the throttle body. So I'll go ahead and start the process of getting that all apart. I've gone ahead and, obviously taken the transmission off of it, and the flywheel and the clutch, and the transmission is going to need some work. Got it off, and you can see it's pretty dirty inside the bell housing. I don't think it's ever been cleaned. The fluid, I went ahead and drained the fluid out of it. You can see it's pretty dark. It looked like deep red metallic. You can kind of catch a little bit of a hint off the reflection of the door there. It's a real deep red metallic, so it tells me it's pretty dirty. It needs to be replaced. Obviously, put new fluid in. But I'm going to go ahead and send the trains out and have it going through just to make sure all the gears and synchros and all that stuff are in good shape. Obviously got everything tore apart here. It did have a brand new clutch in it. It's over there under the flywheel. Somebody did kind of a crappy job on turning the flywheel, so I'll send it out, have it turned. May wind up using this billet one that I've got over here in this pile of parts. I'm going to start going through all this stuff here before too long and lay it all out into the categories that I talked about into each one of the systems so that I can get everything organized, figure out what I'm going to need, what I'm not going to need. So just starting the teardown process on the engine now, and I will be back once I get a little deeper into it. I made some pretty good progress. I've got a majority of the stuff off the engine, all the accessory drive, everything but the water pumps off the front, and of course the timing cover. The only issue I'm having right now is getting the crossover tube loose. These are held in place with a couple of bolts, actually intake manifold bolts, and then there's 2 nuts that screw on there. There's an O-ring that goes in here and an O-ring that goes in here, and right now because of the corrosion that this engine has, it's pretty tight. So I'm working on getting it loose. Stand's a little wobbly, not real happy with the stand, but for now this will work until I can get this torn down a little further. All the wiring harness is off, the upper intake. I'll start working on getting the lower intake off. I'm probably going to go ahead and leave the fuel rails and the injectors on there for now, and the intake runner plates, which on these cars, you can see these 2 cables right here. They go underneath the intake manifold to that box, and then you can see these black plastic plates right here between the intake, and that one's actually got a crack in it, so it'll definitely need to come out. But basically what those do is it controls the amount of air that goes into the engine. These will regulate the air going to the second set of intake valves, basically to help it build some low-end torque, and then once it revs up to a certain point, the other valves come in and you get the full higher RPM of this engine. So that's where I'm at right now. You can see I've got a majority of it torn apart, a little bit more to go. I'll come back in a few minutes. So I've made quite a bit of progress. Got the water pump off, got the intake off, harmonic balancers off, everything but the heads, the cam covers, and the timing cover and the oil pan. At this point, I can see that there is a lot of corrosion in the coolant passages of the cylinder head and then where the water pump actually meets the block. These Cobras have an aluminum block. It's called a Texid block. It's actually cast in the same foundry in Italy that Ferrari and Lamborghini use. So it's kind of cool to see something like that. Ford really had a lot of engineering that went into these blocks back in the day. This is where the rear, the heater hoses were in the rear of the head. That one's got a lot of corrosion in it. And then the other heater hose kind of ran under the intake manifold. There's 2 O-rings on that nipple right there. I think I can still get those. I may have to drive that nipple out of the block. I can't remember if it's serviceable or not. as far as the O-rings go. It seems like I've replaced them before, but I think it's easier. Just go ahead and replace the nipple because I'm sure it's corroded too. So next step, I'm gonna go ahead and get the cam covers off, get the timing cover off, get the motor mounts off, that dipstick. Those are the knock sensors that are under the intake manifold there. I'll get those out. We'll get this stripped down a little bit further. Definitely want to see the inside of this engine now, see what the oil looks like. When I pulled the dipstick, it's nice and clean, but I really want to look at the bearings on this thing to see how bad they are. At this point, I've gone ahead, made the decision. I'm going to tear this down all the way to a bare block, send it out to the machine shop, have the block cleaned, have the heads cleaned. We'll go through and inspect the cams, make sure that they're still good. So I've got a lot more to tear down. Well, cam covers are off, timing covers off, and this is not what I really expected. I was told the engine has 71,000 miles on it. There is a lot of sludge built up on the inside of this engine. For being 71,000 miles, I would say they probably didn't change their oil very often. Might have gone with maybe a cheaper filter that didn't capture everything, but there's just a ton of sludge everywhere you look inside this engine. You can tell that there was a little bit of water in here at some point because right around that bolt, I've cleaned up some of this stuff as I found it, but at the top of this motor where condensation would form, you can see like right there, it's kind of curdly looking milk and oil water mixture. Yeah, and down there you can see that lighter fluid is actually where water is mixed with the oil. I don't think this had a head gasket failure. I just believe that's condensation or water getting into the engine from it sitting outside. So this confirms what I kind of guessed at. I need to rebuild this thing. It needs to be torn down. We're gonna go through the entire thing, all new timing chains, new guides, have the cams cleaned up and make sure that the heads where the cam rides, the race is in good shape and within spec. And then we'll, obviously put a new oil pump in, new bearings, all that fun stuff. So for now, I'm gonna go ahead and probably start tearing this apart the rest of the way. This is about to get really messy. And that's why I wear gloves when I do this. You can see I've got my gloves on now. It's going to get really dirty. I'm going to start transferring stuff back there to my parts washer. So I'm going to move that wood out of the way. And as I get some of these parts off, we're going to get it back there. I have not drained the oil yet, so that'll be the absolute next thing I do. I'm going to drain the oil. Now that I've got this kind of apart, go ahead and get the motor mounts off and tag those bolts. Something to mention when you're doing this, could be a long time before you put it back together. I've mentioned this in some of my other videos before, but I mean, I'm being very, very specific about these bolts. So there's my left cam cover, right cam cover. I mean, water pump to block, everything in here is bagged up. As I'm taking a bolt off, if it's part of a bracket like this coil bracket, there was like 4 bolts to hold in on. So I took all 4 of those, put them in one bag. When I went to the other side, I bagged it. I'm being very, very specific. It may be a year or more before I put this back together. I've got a pretty good memory when it comes to certain bolts and stuff. But when we're working with these mod motors, a lot of these bolts look very similar. A lot of this is all metric. So it's very difficult to remember where bolts go. There's not a lot of information out there about where the bolts go either. So makes sense, tag it up while you're doing it. Makes life a whole lot easier on reassembly. And I'm going to continue this process. So I've got all the timing chains off, got the tensioners, all the sprockets, the gears, everything's off. Next thing I need to do is pull the heads, pull the oil pan, and then I can flip the motor over, start looking at the crank and the bearings in there, see what's going on. So this is going to be a good stopping point for this video. Make sure to hit the subscribe button and the bell notification so that you will be notified when I upload a new video. You guys know what to do there. Thanks everybody for watching. Catch you on the next one.